Hey, I'm Bob at I Like to Make Stuff. Today we're going to turn some of this into one of these. It's been a while since I've made kind of a quick afternoon project as a video, and I want to do that because the holidays are coming up and maybe you're looking for something handmade that you can make for somebody you know. Also, I've got something that I want to improve. This is the wallet that I carry every day, and I made this about a year ago just on an afternoon with no video, and I made it up as I went along. It's got a few little slots here to slide things in on both sides, and it's got a section in the middle for you to put in cash. But there's a few things about this that I actually don't like and I want to fix on another version. The part where the cash goes in is a little loose and kind of floppy, gets bent down, and the corners are a little bit too long and they've gotten bent down as well. Overall though, this works out really well, so we're going to improve on it. What I want to do here is to take these parts that are unsupported out here and up here and move them in so that they're in line with the other seams. That'll make it a little bit more robust and hopefully these parts won't bend as much. I'll show you what I'm talking about when we start putting it together, but I am going to make this using a template, so if it works out, I'll put the template for you to download. You can make your own. When I made this first one, I basically cut 6 pieces of leather, 3 for each side, stacked them up and sewed them together. I just left one opening on one side to put in cash. But this time I'm going to do it a little bit differently, cut one piece for the big section and fold it over, and then add the pockets to the outside. And to do that, I made a template. Now, I cut this out on the laser. You could make this out of cardboard if you wanted to. But basically, I've got the big piece that's going to go in the center, and you can see that this is just twice as big as the wallet itself. So that piece is going to get folded over, and then this is to cut out the individual pockets that'll go on the outside. I basically put 2 different size pockets in this one template. So I can use this upper line to make the shorter pocket and the bottom line to make the bigger pocket. Let me get these laid out and I'll show you what I'm talking about. One of the things that makes leather so awesome to work with is that you can cut it with a utility knife. It's super easy. So I've got these 2 pockets cut for this side, and before you cut the other 2, you have to remember that you're going to be flipping them to put on the other side of the wallet. So they're going to go this way, which means you need to flip over your template before you cut it so that you've got the finished side of the leather facing out. It took like 2 or 3 minutes to cut all these pieces, so now we're ready to move on. One of the big things I'm doing differently on this one than the one I made before is that I'm going to fold this large piece over as a centerpiece. I'm not entirely sure if that's the best plan rather than just cutting it in half, but I'm going to give it a shot. One of the things I need to do here is to make sure that this crease is really nice and flat so that it doesn't bubble up this outside. You can do that a couple of different ways. I'm going to use a skiving knife to go on the back side and kind of scrape out some of the leather to thin out the material right on the fold. Then I'm also going to wet it, put it between 2 pieces of wood, and clamp it down while it dries. That should help hold this shape before we go to do any of the stitching. So I'm going to get just the spine of this piece of leather wet, not super wet, but just kind of damp, and then put it in between these 2 pieces of MDF. Now, one thing you want to think about is that wet leather will take on the impression of whatever you use to clamp it down. So I'm using something that's really smooth. Otherwise, you would see the wood grain or any defects in the surface of the leather when it's all said and done. I'm going to leave this in here for just a little while so it can get that shape. It doesn't need to completely dry out or anything. But while I'm waiting on that, I'm going to go ahead and dye the other pieces so that they're ready to be put together with some glue before we do the stitching. I'm going to use this walnut dye. I've used it a bunch of times and I really like the way it looks. The only thing is you got to put this on and then let it dry for a couple of hours before you start handling it. The dye on these pieces is just about dry, so I'm going to go ahead and start to glue them together with some barge cement. This is going to make the joints stronger over time, but it's also going to make it a lot easier to sew them up. The cement is something that you put on two parts, let it dry, and then you stick it together and it immediately bonds. That's going to reinforce the stitching once we get to that point. Now we don't want to put that barge cement everywhere, we just want to put it around the outside. So I'm going to take one of these cards that's going to fit in here and use that as a guide, and then just put a little bit of barge around the outside of these pieces and stick them together. This thing's already starting to look a lot better than the old one. I'm excited about where it's headed, but now I need to move on to the stitching. Now I don't want this edge to be stitched, so what I'm going to do is open it up and add the stitching here and here, then I'll close it and add stitching around the other three sides to keep it closed. That'll keep the opening for cash on this side, but it will still reinforce this outside edge with a solid stitch. Now honestly, it's been a really long time since I've done any leather work, so I've kind of forgotten the order of operations between like stitching and sanding and trimming and all that stuff. So I may accidentally do it out of order, but I'm gonna go ahead and keep working on this and do those different pieces as I need to so we can finish this thing up. I don't know if I've ever shown this or not, but this is called a stitching pony. It's got a little flat piece at the bottom that you can either sit on or you can actually clamp it down to a table. And then up here is basically just a really simple clamp. You've got a little release here. You can put your leather piece in there and clamp it down just so it holds it in place while you can stitch. This is a really inexpensive tool, but it makes a huge difference when it comes to hand stitching. Normally you would put both of the needles through the hole on opposite sides at the same time so they cross on the inside and then you pull them tight. Unfortunately, the needles I have are too thick to both fit in there at the same time, so I'm just gonna have to go back and forth between them. Takes a little bit longer, but effectively it's the same. This video is sponsored by Bespoke Post. With the holidays coming up, this is something you're gonna wanna think about. Bespoke Post is a subscription box service, and in each one of these boxes there's something really cool. The way this works is you go to the website, you fill out a short quiz, and that helps them recommend a box for you. Now of course you can take that recommendation or you can pick your own from a bunch of different categories. They've got things for clothing, barware, outdoor gear, technology, kitchen stuff. There's a bunch of different options and it's changing all the time. I actually asked them to send me 2 different boxes so that I could try out a couple of different things. I got the Forge box, which comes with a beautiful Damascus steel knife. This thing's got walnut scales, it's super well made, it's beautiful to look at. The other thing I got was some true wireless earbuds. I've got some other more expensive true wireless earbuds and I wanted to try a different kind. And to be honest, these sound at least as good, if not better, than my more expensive ones. And speaking of price, these boxes are $45 each, but what's inside is at least $70 at retail, so you're saving quite a bit of money, and even better than that, it's free to join. If you get a box that you don't like, you can return it or exchange it. You can skip a month, you can pause your subscription, or you can cancel it altogether with no hassle. If you want to find out more about Bespoke Post, hit the link down in the description, go take the quiz and figure out which box is right for you. Surprisingly enough, stitching by hand does not take very long. This only took a few minutes to do all of these different sections, and now that's done, and so we need to move on to finishing. Now there's a few things you want to do when you finish your leather projects. You want to make sure that you've sealed up the end grain so that it won't fray over time, and you want to protect the outside surface with some wax. So the first thing we're going to do here is take some sandpaper to the outside edges, get all of these individual pieces flush, then we're going to add some gum tragacanth. This is a material that seals up the end grain, and it makes it so that when you burnish those edges, they end up really, really smooth. I decided to laser my logo in there really quickly before we do the final stage, which is putting on wax. Now I know not everybody's into using leather for their projects, but you don't have to use leather. There's vegan leather, you could use material, there's a lot of different things because this is basically a sewing project. But regardless of what material you use, this is a project that you can do without a whole lot of tools and without a whole lot of experience, and it turns out to be really nice. This is a great thing to make for yourself, or you can make them as gifts and give them away, or you can sell them. Just remember that something like this that doesn't take a whole lot to learn could actually become a product that you could make and sell to other people. I hope this video gave you some ideas about some leatherworking projects that you can get started on, or just something that you can make for yourself or for somebody else coming up this holiday season. But if this isn't your thing, we've got tons of other projects of all different types that you may want to check out. If you're not subscribed, be sure to do that as well. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Does not take very long to stitch by hand, oddly enough. Working or something else that you can make for yourself or for someone. We've got tons of other types of projects that tons of other types of projects that you may want to check out of all of types. But if this isn't your thing, we've got tons of other types of projects that you may want to check out. Hey! Don't touch me!